Okay, so this is the next episode of All Apologies, Guilt and Blame. My first book and my first podcast was Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. My second podcast and book was titled Losing Touch with Reality. All three books are in my series Life Beyond Silence. I know for sure you can read and get an audiobook of my first book on Amazon, on Barnes and Nobles, different avenues like that. And I think why I did the podcast in the first place was to kind of finalize my story and motivate me to go ahead and put the other two books on Amazon. And I will. I promise. But I wanted to finish all the podcasts first. So, anyway, that's where I'm at right now, is still working on my podcasts. So, please keep listening. Let's get into the next episode. So, there's still quite a bit I probably want to say. Mainly that I feel like I have come full circle. I feel like I've been through a lot. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't know that other people didn't live the life that I lived. I mean, I knew that some of my friends didn't have as much, but most of them did. And I knew that I had a family that was, I don't know, just not warm. You know, I remember when I was a teenager, I really loved being with my girlfriend's family. You know, there wasn't always drama. There was a lot of fun times. Her mom, Betty, was like a second mom to me. I was welcome there. They lived in a small house, and yeah, that was kind of like paycheck to paycheck, but the home was so full of love, and it was fun. And even when my girlfriend and me got in trouble, it was like wash dishes, you know, hang out the clothes, do things like that. And I can remember at my house, it could be a lot worse. Looking back, I just didn't think it was dysfunctional, I guess, in the way that I've now come to realize. I remember one time my mom and dad getting into it when I was in the kitchen. I don't know how old I was, but I remember my mom whipped around. She was at the sink peeling potatoes or something. And I remember she whipped around when my dad came up, basically bitching behind her. And she had a little knife, a kitchen knife in her hand. And she was like literally right in front of his belly. And I remember he backed off and walked away. But I just never thought it was as bad as it was. Even when my mother would do crazy things, and my father too, I just chalked them up to, these were my parents, and they were strong-willed people. I remember one time we were at the boat dock, and they got into it with some people that I guess weren't regulars. And my dad was really upset at somebody. And I was just always standing in the back somewhere. And I remember my mother was raising her voice too, saying whatever. And I remember the guy said something like, you better keep your wife in check or whatever, if you know what's good for you or whatever. And I remember my dad and my mom both pouncing on those people. It was a full-on fight. I don't know how it ended. I don't remember much else after that. I just thought it was normal to have parents like this. I have good times in my past, and I have bad times in my past. Especially when it comes to my childhood. I remember playing at my dad's, mom and dad's. They had a ranch type home, and it was just a country home out in the country. My grandfather had a small farm. To be honest, I don't remember what he did other than we had pigs and chickens and cows. And land, plenty of land. But I remember going fishing with my grandmother out at the pond and my cousins. I remember having a playhouse up in or a fort, I guess you would say, up in the treetops. I remember playing with my cousins. I remember they had a full basement, and it was just concrete and old furniture, but it was amazing to play down there. You could lay on the beds and talk about things. You could go through stuff. My grandmother just let us play. I remember there was a laundry chute in the bathroom, and it went straight down into the basement where she did laundry on an old washer type wringer washer. It was amazing. She had an old sewing machine down there, a pedal sewing machine. And my cousins had a train set on top of a pool table. It was fun to be there. And I won't say that my grandfather wasn't authoritative, because he was, but never over the top with us. And I remember being at my mom's, mother and dad's, my grandfather, my papo is what I called him. He was everything to me. And I've talked about him in the past in the podcast. But he was everything to me. I felt he always said I was the apple of his eye, and I felt like it. I felt like so special every time I was there. And my mother had a brother, Uncle Larry, that he was this huge, monstrous man, but he was so kind and so sweet to me. And we talked about everything: boys, drugs, music. And then when I was like 14, I lost both of them. And I talked about it in the podcast earlier. If you'll listen to my first book, Not a Victim, a Survivor, you'll hear all about them. But yeah, looking back, I can remember both good times and bad growing up. I can remember being with my dad and thinking he was so amazing with cars and boats. Just about any kind of engine he could fix. And I tried my best to help around the shop. Sometimes I didn't do what I needed to do. I can remember thinking the garage is so dirty. The shop is so dirty. But I went there almost every day and hung out. And my dad did help me with my first cars. And even though we went through a lot of drama when I was a teenager, because let's face it, I wasn't the best kid. I've talked about that too. I wasn't. And like I said, I didn't even realize that there was so much dysfunction in my family. And I do take a lot of blame and have a lot of guilt for not listening and for being a rebellious teenager. You could tell me to go right and I'd go wrong. Or you could tell me to go right and I'd go left, however you want to put it. Every twist and turn, I just seem to be doing things the wrong way. And I get it. I was acting out. I didn't, like I said, know that my family was so dysfunctional. But I knew that things that they did, I knew I was lashing out at how, if I'm going to be grounded or if I'm going to not be able to go to my room and have to sleep on the couch or whatever the punishment may be, I knew that I was just determined to, if it's going to be bad, it might as well be bad for me never coming home. And I just would stay out as long as I possibly could until I either got caught or until I just had to realize I had to go home. Because it didn't matter if you're like 30 minutes late or 4 hours late, you were still going to get whatever they handed down. But I know I did a lot of things wrong, and maybe things would have been better for me if I'd done everything right. Maybe I would have gone to college right after high school. Maybe I would have just had a better relationship. I don't know. I just think that from a little girl, I felt like I wasn't as wanted as what maybe you should be or you should feel as a little girl. You know, I always looked at my kids, like my first daughter. Yeah, maybe it's the wrong thing to have a kid when you're going through a marriage that you feel unloved. Maybe that's true. But to me, having my first daughter was like having a little baby that I could take care of and love, and who would love me when it seemed like my first husband just pushed me aside. I was so proud to have this beautiful little baby. And then with my second daughter, she was like a little bird. You know, I had literally just gotten divorced by the time I had her. And I was so excited to have this little bitty, tiny baby. She was a preemie, and that wasn't good, but she was adorable. She literally was so small, but so big in spirit. Her eyes lit up a room, and everybody that saw her loved her. And at the time that I had her, Walker, my second husband, the one that abused me, he wasn't doing any of that when I first had her. We weren't married, and he was kind, and we were having a typical romance. He was loving and caring and gentle, and I was in love with him. And he said from the minute she was born, I wonder if there's a way I can adopt her. And I said, I don't know. And the next thing you know, he adopted her. So he gave her his name. And when he got a settlement from the mines, we got married. And it was good for a little while until it wasn't. And all of that is in the podcast too. In the first book, second book, and this third book. But I loved him. He just had demons I couldn't fix. My third daughter, I thought the same thing. I thought, I have my first child with dark flowing hair, big eyes, beautiful lips, and she was just adorable. My second daughter was a charmer, big eyes. She was cute as a bug in a rug. She was amazing and smart. She was little because she was a preemie, but she was smart. And by the time I had my third daughter, I was married to my third husband. And we were in Germany. And I'd been a nurse for a long time. And having a daughter in Germany was an experience in itself, which, like I said, I wrote about and talked about in my first podcast. It was a real experience, but it was enjoyable. And my daughter came out and she was beautiful. And everybody called her a little carp, little fish, because she always made her mouth kind of like a fish's mouth when she was like just snoozing or whatever. But I got to take her and go to German stores and buy her German clothes for a baby. She had lots of German baby clothes, and I even fed her German baby food. And it was actually the first time I ever even used a stroller was in Germany. And it was crazy. I had a girlfriend that was German, and it was just crazy going out and taking my little infant into town almost every day, going shopping, showing her off. And when she got a little bit older and she started eating real food, which her first real food was like a McDonald's burger. And it was when she was really little, and I was like, oh no, don't give her that. And my girlfriend was like, yeah, she can eat it. It's just mush if you mash it with your finger. And she can gum it. And she did. She gummed it and ate it and didn't choke. And I was like, okay. That's okay. And then by the time she was like sitting up in her stroller, she was eating a lot of German food, actually. We would just stroll around to the cafes and she would eat everything from ice cream to Brochen, which is like a bread roll. She was just a big eater. And she was so happy. She was a happy baby. And then by the time I had my son, had just gotten back from Germany, and it was with my fourth husband. I know that makes me sound like such a, I don't know, terrible person. I had 4 children, 4 different men, and yeah, it makes me sound probably terrible, but I don't regret any of them. I loved my children and still do. It's like I needed them. I needed my kids to make me feel happy and loved. I went through so much all those years, but I had my kids to keep me going, to keep me getting up in the morning, to keep me pushing through. Anyway, what I was going to say about my son is he was my only son, still is my only son. And when I had him a little early, but he was a fighter and he was so adorable and looked just like his dad. But he was a powerhouse. I can remember when he was so little bitty, but he would stand up in the playpen, and with him I didn't have an actual bed. We just decided, because we were pretty broke, that we would just have a playpen, or at least I decided, because it was just easier. You have a playpen and he sleeps in it and he plays in it, and that way I don't need a bed, because we just didn't have money to do that, or space actually. But it was okay. It worked out. But he used to stand up and shake the playpen, and he literally broke 3 playpens as he started growing. He just tore them up. I remember he used to watch Star Trek with my ex, and I watched Star Trek too, but he used to watch Star Trek and do the whole dance kind of thing to the song. And then as the Star Trek vessel would take off into space, he would be like, da da da, with his hand. It was adorable. Silly to think about all those things now, but they're memories I'll never forget. But yeah, I loved every one of my children. I wish that I had made the right choices for them. I wish I maybe could have given them more, because all the years that they were growing up, I just didn't have it. I remember writing bad checks just to get groceries. I won't say I did the best I could, because I'm sure I didn't. I won't say that I was a great mom, because I'm absolutely positive I was not. I know for sure I was not the best mom. But I loved each and every one of them. And all differently. You know, some people say, oh, you have like 6 kids and you love them all and everything's great and they're all, equal. My kids weren't equal. They were all different children. And I loved each and every one of them in a different way. They totally were different people. Maybe they were, I don't know, born under a different moon or something. But my oldest was studious, and that's probably why she ended up really excelling in college and her life. She's done so well for herself, and I'm so proud of her. But I won't rehash what all happened. You'll have to listen to my other podcasts. I'll probably say a little bit more in this one, but you really should listen, especially to my first podcast and then to my second, to get the full story. My second daughter, which I always thought to be the charmer, is beloved by everyone that knows her. She's living a good life, and I'm very proud of her. She's the most level-headed and loving person that I know. My third daughter, if anybody of any of my children is more like me, she probably is. She is smart. She's strong-willed. She has a lot of my mannerisms. Probably not the best thing to have, by the way. But she's very strong-willed. And she's got a healthcare job. Not the typical healthcare job that I did have. I was a nurse, which is probably stereotypical from the years that I grew up and started having a career. But hers is more, I would say, more promising for her to have a long, good career that really she can grow from. I mean, I could have grown too. I could have gone on and done what I should have done and maybe ended up like most of my friends that are nurse practitioners. I probably could have ended up like them and should have ended up like them, but I just made all the wrong choices. But my third daughter is on her way, if she plays her cards right, to having a long career that could really, she could really do something with and make something of her life with. But she's been doing it for quite a while now, and I'm very proud of her. And all my daughters have my grandkids. My first daughter has one. My second daughter has two. My third daughter has a son and a daughter. All the others are girls, so I have 4 girl grandchildren and 1 grandson. And it's so funny. Like I said, it's kind of like the circle of life, but all my granddaughters look like their mommies. They're like mini me's of their mommies. And it's really amazing to see the pictures and to be around them, because I get to look at my grandchildren and see my own daughters when they were so little. It's like reliving a lot of what I missed. You know, I told all my kids that I feel like I missed out because I was not the best mom, like I said, and I loved them, but I wasn't around like I should have been, and I didn't take care of them the way that I should have. And my little grandson, he is a powerhouse. You've probably even heard him like talking or doing anything in the background of my podcast. I'm around him quite often and he's amazing. He's so smart. And he's the apple of my eye. He's the smallest one of my grandkids. He'll be turning 4 pretty soon. So pretty much all day I watch CoComelon and all those videos that I talk about on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel that's on movies. Well, actually, the title is TV and Movies, Movie Reviews That You Can Trust. TV and Movie Reviews That You Can Trust. And it's doing really well. But I write reviews on TV series and movies. And I have a lot of kid stuff on there. But it's funny because he's a powerhouse. He's all boy, but he's so loving. I look back and I think how much I wish I had done better as a parent. But I don't think my mother ever thought I was a good parent in any way. I don't think she ever thought she was a bad one in any way. Anyway, I'm going to cut this episode short. I'm kind of running late on it. I meant to do it last night and I got tired. That's an honest truth. I just got tired and didn't post it. So I got up early this morning, finished my podcast, and I'm going to cut it short so I can get it out to you. But there's plenty more to go. I just kind of wanted to go over my childhood and having my kids and letting you know that they are all wonderful people. They're all grown. They're all doing good. My son doesn't have any kids yet, but he's amazing. He's an amazing man. And I look back and I think, I wish things were different. But you can't go back. And I wouldn't change anything when it comes to my kids. They're amazing. Young people. And they've got families. And they're doing good. And my son, is a wonderful man. And I wish I could do more. But I'm kind of running out of time, you know? I've kind of done all I could. Or can, I guess you could say. Anyway, I'm going to cut this episode off, and there will be plenty more. So please keep listening. Thank you.